Hello, it's Toy here with another choice review. I know I said I wasn't going to do really many ultra rares, but Sand Grenade. It's just kind of one I've been talking about with a few people since Mortal Kombat was previewed. Um, okay, let's go over the stats. So it's 5 diff, it's a 2 check, it's got a 1 low block, and it's a 4 low for 5. It's on air chaos order. It is powerful 2, it's a ranged tech attack. This attack is +1 to its powerful rating for each of your opponent's committed foundations, and then it has a deadlock E, commit 2 of your opponent's foundations. The deadlock E, the commit 2 of your opponent's foundations, you get to pick those, so that's solid, although most people are just avoiding deadlock anyways. But, it's there, it's good. The big appeal of this card is the +1 to its powerful rating for each of your opponent's committed foundations, because on the majority of turns, starting around turn 2, they're going to have something committed. Very rarely are you going to be pushing into an opponent that doesn't have anything committed. On top of that, it's very easy to lead this attack with a stun attack, just to ensure they got more, just to ensure you're getting more powerful, just so you can really stick some damage on this thing. Obviously, being a powerful attack, you're going to want a character that can gain momentum. Erron Black himself easily gains momentum during his turn. And there's many other on air and chaos that can pick momentum up quite easily. Order, it's a little bit more tough. I know there's a motivate out there for the ranged kit on order. So you do have different ways you can get momentum. Now, Sand Grenade's interesting because it is a 5 diff, and you want to be playing it later in the chain. So, because you want to get that damage to stick, it is a low attack, and most decks that people build for some reason have very little low blocks, even though cards like this exist that can just straight up win you the game on a low attack. And we had Hydrofork before, which was a not quite as effective version of this, but it held a similar role. So Sand Grenade, its ideal use is later on in the chain, 3rd or 4th attack, after your opponent's kind of used up resources blocking other things. You can throw this thing at them for monstrous damage and then just kill them with it. So it really wants to be at the end when your opponent thinks they've dealt with all of your threats, and then you have the one more, and the one more kills them. Now, the issue with that is that it is a 5 difficulty attack. Therefore, unless you're running hot, you're going to need some kind of method to help ensure you can get this thing out consistently, because the last thing you want to do is then try to throw a Sand Grenade at them and then brick on that check, and then your opponent can just backswing into you. That's not really the situation you want to be in. So Sand Grenade does want to be in the kind of deck that can ensure that the attack goes through easily, like that you can play it easily. Again, Erron Black is one of the most ideal for that, seeing as he can self-clear his own low attacks out and then throw Sand Grenades at that lower difficulty level because of progressive. So obviously it's his card, so of course it's going to work really well with him. But it doesn't mean you can't run in other characters that are really good with momentum. You're just going to need to kind of plan on a way to deliver it later on, or you're going to need to plan on a method in order to make this thing go through. There is Melina's new flash kick that lets you look at their hand. So in some situations, like if you're playing on Chaos, there's a way that you can look at their hand before throwing a Sand Grenade. So you can at least figure out if you're going to be able to hit half damage on it. Because sometimes the amount of damage you can just get on Sand Grenade at half damage will be able to clean up a game. Like, there's different methods. You just need to think about how you're going to deliver it. Ideally, it wants to go late, so that if they have to commit resources in order to deal with your other attacks, then it's only adding to Sand Grenade's enhance. And then otherwise you'll need a different delivery method for Sand Grenade, or you'll need to figure out how you're going to get it through. And there's other methods too, but I don't want to get too far into it. Another interesting thing about Sand Grenade is, so again, if we're going back to the idea where we want to play more attacks before throwing Sand Grenade, you need to ensure you're set up in the game state in a situation where the attacks you're throwing before Sand Grenade need to be addressed, because an opponent, especially if you've checked a Sand Grenade and people know that you're packing it and the game state's ideal for you to kill them with it, they're not going to just waste resources blocking stuff that's not lethal or blocking things that isn't going to super change the game. They're going to just take the damage waiting for the Sand Grenade, waiting for the closer, right? And that's not what you want ideally. So you want to be running attacks that demand attention. And there's all different kinds of ones that gain benefits. You gain draw effects when they hit, you gain whatever else when they hit, or you can just run slow attacks. What I like to do with these kind of things is I like to open up the chains with slow, high damage attacks. They don't have to be slow. I like to encourage blocking if I have a closer in my hand. So I like to make attacks that I'll often sacrifice speed in favor of damage, because damage has to be answered, right? Let's say you have a 7 speed 2 damage attack, that doesn't demand being answered, but a 2 speed 7 damage attack is more in favor of demanding that answer, right? Especially as an opener. So if I want my opponents to waste blocks on previous attacks and to let the sand grenade through, I'm going to throw out attacks in the beginning that my opponent's going to be incredibly hesitant about eating, just on the fear of that I'm throwing it as a poke. They don't want to just eat a higher damage poke, right? They're going to want to deal with that in the moment and hopefully not have to deal with something later on, right? So you got to want to create this situation where your opponent has to deal with the things you're throwing at them before a sand grenade, before a closer in general. But again, that's just an idea. Another thing you can do with sand grenade is you can use it as that opener. Okay, so if you're in a situation where you have more than one closing style of an attack, or you have another method, or maybe even just have multiple sand grenades, you can use the powerful effect on this attack in order to make it a very necessary thing to deal with right out of the gate, right? So you don't have to hold it last. You can make it an instant threat that your opponent has to deal with in order to burn up resources, or in order to bait out the low blocks that they might be having, because you have another threat later on that you can put more damage on, however it ends up being. And again, Aeron Black is good for that, because you can throw the sand grenade first if you've already got momentum. You can throw it first, put some damage on it, throw something else, clear them both, get your momentum, throw another sand grenade, right? Because if you're constantly throwing threats that need to be answered, this card can also be that threat in the beginning. Anyways, otherwise, it's got great stats. It's a 4 low 5. Lows and throws order was a big thing back in the day, because lows and throws are just harder to deal with naturally in terms of deck building. Low blocks aren't always on the most favorable cards. Sand grenade thankfully has an amazing low block on it as well, so if you're running that, it helps progress that package. This attack can be easily run at 3 or 4 copies in the decks that can utilize its abilities, so it's great that way. The one downside to this is, unlike having a card that has multiples coming off of it, this card can be answered with a single block, whereas a multiple oftentimes will need more answers. But there's a couple other differences you can look at in here as well. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about Sand Grenade a little bit. I do really enjoy this card. I do still see a few of the other... I do prefer a multiple attack over a powerful attack, where the benefit of having a powerful attack over a multiple attack in terms of a finisher that uses momentum is that you can... It's more easy to play a foundation, like a build phase after. So if you're playing like 3 attacks and you still want to play a foundation, you can do that if you're playing attack, Sand Grenade on powerful, then you can play foundation, rather than if you play attack, and then you play like a multiple 2 after that, then you've got 5 cards in pool, and it's more difficult to play foundation after a 5 card pool without having to commit extra into that one foundation build, whereas this gives you that option as well. Like, there's just these little differences, and if you just keep those in your head while you're building or using cards like this, and it can come in handy. Maybe not very often, but at least it comes in handy, right? So I just said I want to talk about some cards, and this one, I love it. I do love Order. It's one of my favorite symbols, and Order got a lot of really cool tools in Mortal Kombat, and I'm really happy for that. So, and Sand Grenade is definitely one of them, so watch out for this thing.